Hello everyone, this is Master Viktor Neustruev and welcome to my 101st webinar that is called the Preconditions of the Kingside Attack. Okay, we are about to start, we're just waiting for more attendees to come. You may look at this position that I'm demonstrated. Actually, it's taken, just a sec. The position is taken from the game between Jan Timon and Anatoly Karpov. If you have any questions, please let me know, and please also tell me if the sound and video quality is good. Okay. So we are going to talk about the Kingside Attack and what should happen in the position so that you may initiate a Kingside Attack and make it successful. Okay, looks like so I'm doing this webinar through Lichess, and Lichess is about to restart in 4 minutes, unfortunately. However, maybe it won't be a problem for us and everything I'll just reconnect successfully. Okay, so guys who entered this webinar already, okay, yeah, Forky83, yeah, nice to see you again. Okay guys, I'm also streaming this webinar on YouTube. So together with Twitch, I'm streaming it on YouTube. And you can find it in our educational group, Tricks of Chess. Okay, fine. So okay. So looks like people are joining. Guys who attend this webinar for the first time, could you please introduce yourself a little bit? Just tell me which country are you from and what's your FIDE ELO. If you don't have a FIDE ELO, it can be just USCF ELO or even chess.com rapid or blitz rating. Okay, so what should you do to be able to start the attack? You know, there are at least three facts that you can take into account before initiating the attack. What are they? First of all, if you have a material majority on the king side, then you may start the attack. You may even consider a piece sacrifice, a knight sacrifice, a bishop sacrifice, usually, to be able to destroy the enemy pawn cover and bring more pieces to the attack with a tempo. So if you see that a lot of your pieces are located on the king side and the king is only covered with the pawns, then you may initiate the attack and it can be successful. The second thing, for example, if his pawn cover is already weakened, like there is no one pawn or maybe the pawns are doubled, then you also may initiate the attack. And of course, you may realize that there are just a few pieces defending the king. Usually it happens when there is no knight on f3 or on f6, depending on which color are you playing with. So if there is no knight there, then you may start attacking this square. Maybe this square if you're playing with white. So what about this position? It's black to move. What do you think black should do? How would you play if you were black in this position? Okay. Yeah, hello everyone who joined us recently, and especially to Robert from Scotland. Okay. Sanjay from India. No. Paulina Padraza, of course you attended it several times. And Tim Priest from Sydney, Australia, with feeder rating about 1800. Okay, and Tim suggests to play knight takes h2. Parallax suggests queen g5, and Forky suggests queen g5 to move the king to the h file to attack h2. Oh, guys, that makes sense. However, you see, if you can play knight h2 and knight h2 works, then you shouldn't analyze queen g5, because queen g5 is too slow. If you realize that knight h2 sacrifice doesn't work, then yes, let's just bring more pieces to the attack and play slowly. Okay, so what do we have in this position? Knight h2 with the idea of queen h4, king, let's say, goes back, and what then? How to continue? Okay, no, let's make these moves on the board. So then queen h4, if they play king g2, it doesn't change much because you have queen h3. So let's say they play this move immediately. No, because if king g2, queen h3, they have to go back. If they go there, then bishop g4 is a checkmate actually. So the king goes to g1 immediately. How do you continue? What's your opinion? What do you think? Take on g3. Okay. Yes, you may sacrifice on g3, f takes g3. This is how you get rid of his pawn cover. The king goes to h1. Now the task is just to deliver a checkmate. How would you play after that? Leave the rook, exactly, but which move? Okay, so let's take on g3, they take, we capture, they play king h1. Which rook lift do you suggest? Should we play rook e6, or should we do what? Rook e4? Rook e4 is the other option, so two moves. Which one would you choose? Okay, Parallax suggests e6. Who else? Who else suggests anything? Rook e4. Okay, why rook e4 but not rook e6? Another question for you. I see, guys, what you suggest, but if we look at this position again, no, okay, first of all, let me answer the question. So here queen h4 is a check and they can't capture because of the pin. They have to go to g2 or g1. It doesn't make sense to go to g2 because of queen h3 check and the king finally gets to g1. So king g1 immediately, bishop g3, f takes g3, and then you suggested two moves, rook e6, rook e4. If you play rook e6, that looks logical by the first glance, you may realize that they actually can defend. They can play bishop f4, or f6 I mean, and if then you take, you just exchange the rooks and you don't have enough material to checkmate, unfortunately. Now rook e4 doesn't make much sense because the bishop is covering the h4 square. That's why in this position rook e4 immediately. However, even there he finds the way how to play. He plays this move. What's your next move? What do you think? Bishop h3. Yeah, I agree with you now. It should be bishop h3, but then if they continue, how should they continue? Maybe bishop f1. No, then it's up to you. You may take on f1. You may play queen e1. Yeah, I think just taking there is good. For example, queen goes to c2, and this is where you can play rook e6 and get the material back. Bishop f6, rook takes f6, rook takes f6, then queen h4, they go there, you take, and this is how you attack and protect on f1 simultaneously. This is absolutely winning position because of 3 extra pawns, and still you have the attack on the enemy king. So let's go back. Looks like rook e4 wins the game, and this is a winning combination. What if, let's say, they don't capture on h2, but they play maybe this move? Then you can just retreat, and you can later play with your queen to h5, and so you force them to sacrifice. At least you are a pawn up, plus you still maintain the attack. But before playing knight h2, after you calculate everything that a knight h2, king h2 works, you should ask yourself, can white play better and improve this line? So please answer this question. After knight h2, can they play better? What's your opinion? Instead of king h2, instead of rook e1, is there another good move? What do you think? Okay, queen c3. Queen c3. No, queen c3. I don't believe queen c3 makes much sense. e4, I don't know. Okay, let's say knight h2, queen c3. At least this move makes sense. In this position you may continue with rook takes b2, sacrificing the exchange, because after, let's say, knight takes b2, you are able to gain the exchange back and still continue the attack. If after rook b2 they play something else, let's say king h2, you still play queen h2, or maybe you can just take on e2 and get extra minor piece. So queen c3 doesn't work. Actually, there is such a move. Let me just check that none of you suggested it. Yeah, there is such a move. It's c5, and this move was played in the game actually. What's the idea? Because now if bishop gets distracted, the bishop can't stay anywhere on this diagonal. If it moves, then they can just take on h2, and there is no queen h4 may check. And this is how white can probably save their king. What should we do in such a case? Were you prepared for c5? Anatoly Karpov was. What about you? What do you think? How to continue now? So should we move the bishop? Should we take on f1 or do something else? What's your opinion? No, the question is, how should we react on c5? Because if we just take on c5, they continue with king h2, and because the bishop is already on c5, queen h4 doesn't work because the pawn is not pinned anymore. Queen e4 in this position, but what's the point? Just take. And if you decide to play this move, maybe f3. Okay, guys. No, sacrificing the bishop on g3 and then take the rook? No, actually that makes sense, but there will be two minor pieces for a rook. I'm not sure if there is a compensation. Yeah, maybe white is black is slightly better, but I'm not sure that it's a winning position for black. No. After c5 here, you can take on f1. C takes d6. And now a tricky move, knight takes g3. Why? Why does black play such a move? Because if d takes e7, knight takes e2, fork, king moves knight c1, and in this position right now, no, rook c6, maybe in this position right now, black has two extra pawns and extra exchange. That is more than enough to win the game. So taking the queen doesn't work, and they may take the knight. But in such a case, queen d6, and we also got rid of the c5 pawn, and now I attacking here. So it's one pawn more. Rook plus 3 pawns versus 2 minor pieces. Comparing to the line, if we capture on g3 with the bishop and then take on f1, then probably king f1. So here we have only 2 extra pawns. So once again, knight f1 first, they take on d6, we take on g3, threatening to take on e2, so the queen is not hanging. They have to take on g3, we play queen d6. And then actually the position is winning. White played several moves, and after that resigned. I'm not sure if this, if we need to analyze these moves. They are pretty obvious. Here you see, Karpov decided to simplify the position, just took on d3. The bishop on a6 was better than the knight, of course, but this is how black wanted to weaken the king's position. King takes, rook bd8. Bishop f1, and oh yeah, they had to play this move, because otherwise, let's say they play this, rook d4 is coming. king d4, queen takes e2. If pawn takes, then queen e2, of course. So bishop f1, queen e4, king goes there. And could you please find the next move in this position? What do you think the next move was? No? Any suggestions, guys? Yeah, thank you. Parallax suggests a very sneaky move. It's c5 to get rid of the bishop. Now the bishop has to take. But then after queen c6, this is a pin. King b3, and we are continuing chasing the king. Rook b8, king a3, and after rook e5, they played a few more moves. Here after queen b6, they just resigned. Why? No, first of all, queen b4 is a threat. Second, this is another threat. For example, queen d2, then even rook e3 wins. Because now if bishop c3, then queen b4 is a mate. If king a4 in this position, then queen c6, king a5, and finally rook a5. They block, but it doesn't make sense. This is how Anatoly Karpov outplayed his opponent. And actually, when he played knight h2, he realized that c5 is possible and calculated this line as well. So let me repeat what happened in this game. How did we realize that it's time to initiate a kingside attack? First of all, there were a lot of our pieces potentially attacking the king, these three, plus a rook lift here or there, while he was defending with just a few pieces. The knight, this knight on d1 and the queen couldn't join the defense. And we consider it a knight sacrifice that ruined their pawn cover, after which we could successfully play queen h4, sacrifice another bishop and make a rook lift, which is actually a very typical and logical idea. And after we calculated the line successfully with knight h2, king h2, we should ask ourselves if our opponent can play better and improve the line. And this is how we find c5, which is quite an interesting move, because we have to do something with the bishop or let them capture the bishop. Of course not. Anatoly Karpov didn't analyze the line by the end of the combination. He just considered that knight h2, c5, knight f1. He did calculate these, and after c takes d6, he saw that move. And this is where I believe he stopped the analysis. Because he thought that, okay, what do I have? I have rook plus 3 pawns. Not 1, not 2, but even 3. Plus, black still maintain the attack on the king side. So this is where you can stop the analysis and just evaluate it properly. Okay, fine. Let's continue with the next game. This is the game fragment from the game between Michael Adams and Boris Gelfant. It's black to move. What can you say about that position? So just one more thing about this. So not many white pieces are participating in the defense, and some of them are very passive, and that's why we consider it. Together with our pieces activity, we consider it a kingside attack. The second position, what can you say here? Our king is even in the center. What can you say about our attacking pieces, and which move do you suggest? For black, of course. Oh, by the way, guys, I kindly recommend you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. This is the link. And you can also send me a friend request on chess.com. This is my profile. Okay, so you suggest knight a3. Knight a3 of yours. No, this move was suggested by several people. However, what's the point? Knight a3, b takes a3. Then what? Bishop takes a3. But they can just continue with knight b3, and if you continue with queen c3 threatening the mate, just bishop c1 works. I can show you this move. So they have to take, because if they move there, it's a check, and black gains the material. If king goes there, it's even a checkmate. So they have to take. Then what? No, either queen c3 or bishop a3, one of these two. Let's say this. Let's say knight b3, queen goes there, bishop c1, covering this square, and what then? Maybe this. Oh wait, no, not immediately. But how to deal with this bishop on a3? Maybe it's better to start with this move. But if they play this move, it can be still knight b3, and after a4, bishop d2, something like that, to avoid a checkmate. So knight a3 actually doesn't win the game. The second move that you suggested, actually that move was suggested by Parallax, is knight takes b2. Yeah, first it was suggested by Parallax. Knight takes b2. What now? I think they shouldn't take. Because if they take, we of course continue with bishop a3, and this time this move is a tempo move. So guys, could you please tell me what happens in case if king takes bishop? Because if king doesn't take bishop, if let's say king goes back to b1 after queen c3, they have no defense. They may sacrifice pieces, but that doesn't work. Even if they continue with bishop c1, we can deliver a check, and they just end losing. Oh, if king takes a3, queen c3 is not a mate, because knight blocks. What then? Yeah, a4 threatening to take, which is a mate, almost a mate. Let's say bishop a7, a takes b4, 3, and b2 on the next move. For example, what? Rook d3, b4, king goes there, queen c4, threatening with knight c5 or knight b6. Knight c5, of course, not knight b6. C takes b3, let's say, knight c5, check, because if king takes, then it's rook a7, and the checkmate after. If queen takes, just queen takes queen, and then it's over. So taking the bishop doesn't make sense. Retreating to b1 means queen c3 and the game is over. This move. But then a4 and they still have to take. Now knight b3 doesn't make sense at all. We may take or we may just checkmate immediately. Up to you. So knight b2 works. How did we realize that knight b2 may work in this position? Let me explain. You may notice it by the first glance. For example, here white has a complex of dark squares that are weakened. What are these squares? These and these. And only the b2 pawn covers them. But if we get rid of this pawn, then all these three squares are weak. And we have a dark squared bishop and the queen that can potentially join the attack. Plus our pawns are far advanced, what means that maybe we can also join the rook. So here, only after realizing that the complex of dark squares is weakened, we may consider how to continue the attack. If not this move, then we would castle probably. Okay, fine. The second, now the game number 3 that we are going to talk about is the game by Mikhail Tal, who played against Lyubomir Vtachnik. This position is a little bit more complicated comparing to other. But what move do you suggest for white in this position? It was Mikhail Tal playing for white, so it means that many of his moves were played by intuition. However, we are still strong. Okay, so I'm waiting for more suggestions, and guys, please try not only to guess the move but to explain why you suggest this move. You can together with the move you can suggest a concrete variation, or you can just say in general how you came up to this move. For example, you notice that, and this is where you explain what you noticed. For example, the first move that comes to my mind is the move that Mikhail Tal played. The second move is probably this or that move, because the knight is hanging. Then I would consider a knight move. Okay, so two suggestions and both of them are f6. Okay, let's play f6. What happens then? For example, g takes f6. How would you continue? No, I don't think that knight f6 makes any sense here. Just knight takes knight. G takes f6, and even knight f5 looks good. However, knight f5 is not the best move. Bishop h6, no, there is a much better move. So f6 to force g6 to weaken the g7 square. Okay, actually f6 is correct. What now? If g takes f6, we play bishop d3. We realize that in this position there is a complex of light squares being weakened on the king side. For example, after we play this move and they take, we may play bishop d3, and these squares are weak. And they can't protect the h7. For example, e takes d4, What do you think? How do we continue? Should we play queen h5? What would you play if you were black here? Oh, sorry, if you were white. Oh, bishop h7. Okay, bishop h7, king h7. Then you play queen h5. King goes to g7. How to continue then? Oh, yeah, maybe not king h. King g8, let's say, immediately. A rook lift. Yes, a rook lift, but which rook lift? Because he has bishops. You can't move the rook, no here, neither a g3 nor h3. So which rook lift? Okay, let me help you. Bishop h7, king h7, queen h5, again king g7, queen h6. That's why, let's say, they move to g8 immediately. Rook a3, and if bishop takes a3, then you play rook f3. Clever, but what if they just go back? Okay, who can tell me how to continue in this position? No, rook f3, and what then? If you play rook f3, there is no threat of rook g3 or rook h3. Maybe bishop f4 first. Okay. Bishop f4 first, they may continue with knight g7 probably. Trying to cover. Maybe bishop f5, so bishop f4, bishop f5, and bishop g6 with the tempo. Okay, no, you should play knight f6. Why? No, it's a check, they take. Queen checks there, king goes somewhere to the h file, and just rook f6. Now no defense against rook h6, so they have to sacrifice the queen, after which the game is over. Then the bishop is hanging on d4, d6 I mean. So bishop h6 takes h7 works. Okay, after f6, what if g6? No, then you have to play knight b3, but with such a pawn, you can threaten with bishop h6, which gains the exchange, or maybe queen d2, queen h6, something like that. So what happened in the game? It takes d4. Now, what's your opinion? How would you continue? Because in this position, Mikhail Tal didn't play the best move. He played the second best move, allowing black to save the position. But there was a winning move. So what would you do if you were white? Okay, so yeah, guys, thank you for joining this webinar. This is for those who joined us recently. There is a good question that I already answered. How to understand when to attack in certain positions? You should take into account three factors. For example, you have the material majority on the king side, so you have more pieces that can potentially attack the enemy king. Then it makes sense to initiate the attack on the enemy king. Second, you may realize that just a few enemy pieces are protecting the king, or maybe even nobody, no pieces, only pawn cover. And the third factor that can indicate that it's time to attack the enemy king is his pawn cover. If you see that it's destroyed a little bit, or maybe it's destroyed a lot, then you may initiate an attack on the enemy king. So these three factors to take into account. Also, you may notice the weakness of the complex of squares around the king, and if you can take the advantage of these weaknesses, then you may initiate the attack as well. For example, here in case, as I mentioned here, in case of g takes f6 after bishop d3, the complex of light squares is weakened, and there are a lot of mating motifs you can apply. So e takes d4. The question was how to continue. You guys said bishop g5 or bishop g5, h4. No, bishop g5, g6 then. And the best thing you can do is to play bishop h6 to grab the exchange, but that's not enough because they already captured your knight on d4. So, instead of bishop g5, what can be played? Bishop d3. Bishop d3. No, bishop d3 in this position. If they take on f6, then I would agree with you, but then still g6, and probably bishop h6 is the best option. But you don't have enough material compensation in such a case. How about queen d4? This is what Parallax suggested. Now, actually, what can I say? You play almost like Mikhail Tal. He played queen d4. But unfortunately, that wasn't the best move. Yeah, the best move in this position was f takes g7, threatening to take the rook and opening the king. What happens then? For example, no, they should capture, otherwise they lose the rook, of course, and we should consider two options to capture with the knight or with the king. So let's say knight captures, check, king h8, and then you checkmate on h7. No, at least you threaten. Bishop f5 and rook takes f5. So you gain a minor piece back, and if he decides to take, you continue with queen takes, and it's time to resign. Nobody can protect on h7, so he has to sacrifice the queen. He may also try this option, but I doubt that it works. No, I don't doubt, I'm sure it doesn't work. What do you have in this position? No, bishop h6, maybe knight h5 as well, but I think the most simple way is to play this move, king h8 and queen h6, threatening the mate, and now he has to sacrifice the queen. But with this queen sacrifice, you also win the game. So knight g7 is a critical mistake because of knight f6. King takes g7 to cover the f6 square. But then queen d4 works. What then? For example, what if they play king to g8? How would you continue? What's your opinion? Bishop h6. No, with bishop h6 you only gain the exchange back, but you only gain the exchange, but you sacrifice the minor piece already, actually. So guys, what are your suggestions? Oh, bishop h6 again, guys. I can show you bishop h6 if you want. What are you threatening with this move? No, only to take there. So let's say knight c6. How do you continue? You should move the queen out. g4, h4 are unavailable for you. Queen c3 doesn't make much sense after bishop e5. You have several pieces hanging, so maybe these. Because of bishop c5 now you have queen g3. They continue with queen h4, and maybe this position is this position is winning, but no, is better but not winning. b3 for bishop, b2 I think is too slow. Okay guys, here you just capture on b6 with the queen, because you only sacrificed the knight, and right now you have 2 pawns as a compensation. With this move you're also attacking the queen. What happens then? For example, if they take, you deliver a fork. They what? Continue with this move. You may take there, and then you may take. You may play bishop h6 and take the other one. If this move, then rook ad1, and no, here it's a winning position. You have a lot of compensation. So let's say bishop c7, bishop f3, take, then you may pressure on g7, but even without it you have 2 pawns as a compensation, 2 pawns plus rook versus 2 minor pieces. So after queen b6 they may not take, but let's say play bishop c7. If this move happens, take, queen takes, and bishop f3. Now after rook a7, bishop e3, or they have to give up. They have to let you take on a8 and take with the knight. So again, rook plus 2 pawns versus 2 minor pieces. So queen b6 is a more simple move. Okay, so that was king g8 option. What if f6? Because f6 looks more natural in this position. How would you continue in this case? Okay, so about the attack by intuition. This is what I don't recommend, especially for players under 2000. That's why if you may start the attack, but you shouldn't sacrifice by intuition. You should sacrifice in case if you believe that if you calculated the line and you see that you checkmate or gain the material back, or if you if both of you can't calculate the line, but you believe you still have a strong initiative and they can't distinguish your initiative for maybe for 5-6 moves more. This is the only case where you can sacrifice something by intuition. But you may start the attack by intuition. Why not? While you are not sacrificing the material, you are not losing anything, even if your attack won't be successful. Okay, so bishop g5 here doesn't make much sense because this is protected 4 times. So bishop g5 is not an attack. Here the best move is bishop d3, and with this move white creates a lot of threats. What are they? For example, how to play. No, one of them is of course queen h4, queen h7 then. Let's say king h8. King moves away. Now bishop g7 works. For example, if knight d7, you can continue with queen e4, threatening the mate. Rook f7. Knight takes f6. Then one of the knight captures, but you just grab the rook and that's it. So queen e4 was a double attack actually. If let's say they play a rook a7 to protect the 7th rank, what do you think? How do you play in such a case? Who can tell me? I think this it's easy to find. Yes, thank you. It's just bishop h6, and if they take it, you have queen h4, king g7, and the mate on h7. That's why they shouldn't take. They should play this move, but you take on f8. No, let's say they capture with the bishop. Well, if they capture with the bishop, you take on f6 and take the queen. So they have to capture with the king. In such a case, you can still capture on f6 and then take with your rook. That will be a deadly attack, plus you gain a lot of material. So rook a7 doesn't work. What other move? Maybe rook f7. Bishop h6 still with the same idea. Now, if they take, you still do the same thing, but now you checkmate on h8. So that's why they have to go back to h8, let's say. And what do you think? How to continue in this position? What white should do? Yeah, thank you guys. That you joined my webinars and also suggested to your friends. This is what I ask you to do every time, actually, every webinar. Because I want to grow the number of students here, and of course you understand that these webinars are free, so everyone may join and become a better chess player. So after king goes to h8, knight f6, or what? Knight f6, knight takes f6. What then? What's the point? Because if we take with the rook, they take with their queen, and that's it. Okay. It's again queen e4. You are not threatening to checkmate. Yeah, but they may continue with this probably after queen e4. So guys, it's again queen b6. If they take, this is a fork and you grab the material back. If they don't take, then you are threatening to take their queen. For example, which move to play? Maybe bishop c7 still. Knight c7, knight c7. Bishop c4, and the rook is trapped, almost trapped. Oh, they can probably play with the rook to d7, but you just continue. You just continue with this move, and it should be winning. You are down a piece, but you have a compensation. Plus, I'm sure your attack will be successful. Your next move is rook f8. Oh, they may continue with this. Just take, block with the bishop, sorry, block with the rook, gain a tempo, and checkmate on f8. Oh, bishop f1 actually is a good move as well. Okay, fine. So after f takes g7 and after king takes g7, you can play queen d4, and it's difficult to suggest a move. But Mikhail Tal couldn't find it. Instead, he decided to play queen d4 immediately. No, he didn't. He played queen d4. I'm sure he did analyze f takes g7, but he didn't calculate it to the very end, and probably just wasn't sure that f takes g7 is better than queen d4. So he played queen d4, knight c6. Another mistake by black. Here he could save the position with just knight d7 move. And then after, let's say, bishop g5, they take on f6, bishop h6, bishop b7, and after a few more moves, the compensation, white compensation is just enough to cover the material loss. So this is rook, versus two minor pieces with equal number of pawns. Of course, black has some weaknesses into their camp, but I can't say that white is winning. Maybe just slightly better. Or maybe it's even equal. But in the game it was knight c6. Looks like a logical move, but the knight doesn't protect on f6 anymore. Queen h4. And what then? What are we threatening with? If, let's say, g6, it's bishop g5, king h8, and just knight e7. Oh, with a strong attack, of course. If they take, we take. Then queen h6 is a threat because this rook is not protected, so they can't leave the knight on e7 as it is. They have to play something. If, let's say, bishop c5, then bishop c4, and white still continues their attack, which is quite dangerous. In the game, Vtachnik played bishop g3 with the idea of a discovered attack. This is how he wanted to simplify. Queen takes bishop, queen takes knight on d5. Taking on g7 makes sense, but they continued with bishop f3 first, queen c4, and bishop h6, connecting the rooks. So bishop g7 is a threat, which leads to a checkmate. They have to play g6 and give up the exchange. But Mikhail Tal didn't take. What do you think? Which move did he play? Bishop h5. No, bishop h5 doesn't make sense. You are not threatening to take. He played b3 to get rid of the queen because the queen has to stay and protect on c6. So queen c3 was played. Queen h4, bishop b7, bishop f8, king takes f8, and just queen h7. Now you see they had to capture with the king, because if they, for example, played instead maybe knight d6 move, then still bishop f8 and the king takes. Queen h7, knight takes f6. If queen takes f6, it's just bishop d5 and the game is over after we take on f7. So knight takes f6, but actually check, check, rook joins, king d6, and after queen g7 it's time to resign. So this is a strong pin, we just need to take, and then the f6 knight is hanging. Something like that doesn't make much sense. Queen takes f7 and queen takes d5 on the next move. For example, knight d8 protecting this knight, but queen g6, king c5, rook e4 threatening with this, b5, then rook d1, and this is where black resigned actually, but they should resign earlier. It's completely losing position, even if they pass the game into the end game, and there will be no risk for the enemy king. White is still winning because of two passed pawns on the king side. But of course, such a grandmaster like Mikhail Tal would checkmate anyway. So what can we say about this position? How did we came up to the solution that it's time to play f6? Here we took into account two factors. What are they? They are the weakness of the complex of light squares in this position. And the second is black pieces passivity. Look, all his pieces except this bishop are located on the back rank. So black is too passive. However, the position is open, which is very uncommon for a kingside attack. Usually we prefer to attack when the position is closed or semi-closed. Okay, so no, I didn't analyze the game between Tal and Keller, but maybe I will. Okay, the next is the game between Alexander Alekin and Fritz Samish, who actually invented Samish variation in King's Indian, which is a really nice variation. I played it several times with white pieces when I was younger, and it was successful. However, we are talking about this position, and Alexander Alekin was a better and more popular player. So his queen is hanging on g3. Alexander was playing with white pieces. What can you say? What they should do? And how do you come up to the solution that you should initiate a kingside attack here? What's your opinion? So which move would you play? F takes e6 to sacrifice the queen and begin the attack. No, guys, thank you for this suggestion, but if you sacrifice the queen, it should be a well calculated line. Oh, queen g4 is another suggestion. No, okay, let's try queen g4. Queen g4, knight f6. Queen has to go maybe g5. E takes f5. Knight f5 they will take with the bishop. So I'm not sure if white is better. I believe it's approximately equal. Let's go back. So queen g4, queen h4 maybe. Queen h4, bishop f6. Okay, so there is a good line by Parallax. F takes e6, bishop takes queen. E takes f7 check, king f8, knight e6 mate. Oh, not a mate, the king goes to e7, but you just take the queen. No, knight e6 right now doesn't make sense. F takes e6, and for example, if they capture on e6, then you capture with the knight, because if they take your queen, you take there. The only line to consider here is bishop takes g3, otherwise they are down a pawn in and under the attack. So here you take. Moving there doesn't make sense because knight e6, at least knight c7. But actually, if I'm not missing anything, yeah, you are threatening with this. That will be a mate. Knight d5, king f8, and knight e6 is a mate. A completely winning position. So the king goes there. How do you continue? What do you think? I can actually give you a hint. After the next move, Samish resigned. So which move to play to force your opponent to resign? What do you think? Yeah, thank you. So Parallax is correct. It's just knight d5. Why knight d5? Because we are taking the queen. If, for example, now the queen moves, where? Let's say the queen goes there, then knight e6, threatening to take and threatening to promote with a mate. For example, no, actually bishop g7 is the main threat. They have to play these, then we take there, they move the queen again, probably to a7, f8 equals queen, they take, we take, king goes to h7, and h takes g3 is enough. So here you see the compensation is really huge for the queen. Okay, what else? If queen goes to a7, then knight c6. Queen b7 now, knight d8, queen goes somewhere, and the fate leads to a checkmate. Queen c5 is the other option, but still knight e6 with the same idea. Bishop g7 or knight takes rook. So that's why after knight d5 the game is over. And this is where Samish resigned. So how did we realize that we can sacrifice the queen? Of course, we calculate the line properly. And you may first notice that there are almost no pieces protecting the king, only this bishop. While after f takes e6, we can occupy several squares, e6 and d5, with our knights, which is quite dangerous. Even if we don't gain the enough material to compensate the queen, we still have a strong pawn on f7. Well, once I played a game, actually, let me show you, where I sacrificed the queen myself, but my opponent didn't accept this sacrifice. I'll show you. Actually, you may also find this game on my YouTube channel described, and it was also shown on my webinars. Queen b6, Godiva variation. I played knight b3. They continued with knight f6, attacking a4, knight c3, e6, a3, a6, bishop e3, queen c7. Well, how did I play after that? I played f4, they played d6, and I played g4. And my opponent played knight d7. If I'm not missing anything. And I continued with g5. They played b5. And I reacted with h4. So bishop b7. No, my position was actually better, and I was almost winning, but the game ended in a draw. So bishop e7 was played. Here queen d2 is the best option. I played queen e2, which is a good move as well. Knight c5, bishop g2. They took on b3 and tripled my pawns, but actually it's not the problem. The problem, the black has the problem that I advanced the pawns. So rook c8, rook c1, rook c8, castle. Queen b8, f5, e5, and I played f6. So now my position is definitely better. They can't play this move. Well, let's say if they play this, I just play queen g4, queen g7, and the rook is trapped. After rook f8, bishop h6, and it's time to resign. That's why bishop f8. Queen g4, rook c6, and this is where I played queen g7. I think the idea was quite transparent. Oh, wait a sec. No. I played this move first. They continued with bishop c8. And this is where I played queen g7. Because if now they take, I take with the pawn, and after this move I fork them. They move the king to d8, because if they move to e7, I capture with a check. So king d8, I take there. This is a check, and then I'm threatening with this, this, and this. For example, rook c1, then the best move here is f6, after which I could just take on c8 to stop bishop e6. He takes with doesn't really matter what, then knight f6, and then the next move I promote. He couldn't even stop my queen, no, my pawn from promotion. But unfortunately my opponent played knight d5. I saw that line, but I wasn't sure that there is a perpetual check. Knight d5, queen h8, knight a3, rook c6, knight f1, bishop f1, and here he entered with his queen into my camp, and actually extra exchange wasn't enough to win the game. He did a perpetual check or a repetition. Okay. Let's go back, and the last game I wanted to show you today is the game that was played recently by Anton Korobov and Sergei Zhigalko. Sergei was playing with black pieces here, and I think it's obvious that black should attack in this position. How did I realize it? First of all, the diagonal is weakened. Second, there are more black pieces into the attack. So what do you think black should do? What black move should be? Could you imagine, guys, that actually that was a home preparation? So Sergei Zhigalko once played such a game in 2010 against Luke Van Valley, and that game ended in a draw. Here he played knight g5. However, after that game, he did the analysis and realized that knight g5 was actually not the best option. And this time he played better and won the game without any problems, and even without time spending on it. So what do you think? What black move should be? Queen h4, okay, f4, these are your suggestions. No, as for f4, I'm not sure, because knight e4 just. Knight g3 at the moment is quite risky. F takes g3 and you open the position, so let's say queen h4 now, but rook f3, and if you take the rook, they take with the knight, so this is how they sacrifice, of course, but join more pieces into the attack. Rook g3, just h takes g3 and the king goes there, you just don't have any pieces to attack. Of course, queen h4, joining more pieces. What happens then? Oh, this move just knight queen h3 and knight g5 to checkmate on g2. That's why bishop f3. Queen goes there. No, you see here, knight g3 is not enough. If knight g3, f takes g3, rook takes g3, then the best thing you can do is just a perpetual check. But queen h3, with the intention of rook h6, what leads to a checkmate. What happened then? They played rook e1, f2 e1, because they prepared knight f1. What our move should be now? What do you think? How would you play if you were black? By the way, guys, while you are thinking, so if you are interested in private coaching, you can email me at tricksofchess@gmail.com. And if you have any other questions, also send me an email. So, what do you think? What our next move could be? Knight g5? Unfortunately, no. If knight g5, they can just take on c6, and what then? What else? Okay. No. Knight f6, knight g4 is too slow. I'll show you. This move bishop g2. And what? You play there, or they play queen e2, offering a queen straight. Even if you play knight g4, they can fork with f3, and in case of this move, just take there. There is no checkmate. So knight f1, knight g3. What then? No, if knight takes, then bishop f3 and the game is over. If what? F takes g3. Bishop f3, this is a winning position. The game continued, of course, here, but this is a winning position already. Okay, so knight g3, what may happen in this position? So bishop c6, knight takes f1, because if rook f1, queen h2 is a mate. But they play this move. How would you play now? No, the next move is obvious. It's rook g6, threatening the mate. If king f1, let's say, then queen g2, king e2, this is a winning position with no doubts. Then f4 probably. But what if they play f4 in this position? How would you play? No, actually, what if they play f3 first? How would you continue? Let's talk about this move first. Queen takes f3. Well, queen takes f3 makes sense, but rook f1, and what then? You still can't capture on g2 because of the enemy queen on c2. No suggestions, guys? No ideas, I mean? Knight takes h2. Okay, thanks team. It's knight takes h2, that's right. What happens then? We are threatening with a fork, after which we gain more material. For example, if they continue with rook d6, trying to distract our rook and take the queen, we can just take there, they move the king, then knight e1, their queen is under the attack. So... and this is how we just grab the material. They take there, we take here, and we are rook up. Maybe even more. If king h1 in this position, now knight f3 doesn't work because of our queen being hanging. But after queen h5, we are threatening with this move. And it's actually a checkmate. It will be a checkmate. Okay, let's go back. So f3 doesn't work because of knight h2. Who can tell me what's wrong with f4 move? What happens then? Can we still play knight h2 or not? What do you think? Yes, knight h2 doesn't work. Knight takes h2, for example, in this position, king h1, and unfortunately there is no retreating move with our queen because they deliver a check, king moves, and simply take on h2. When there was a pawn on f3, the bishop was blocked, so there was no way to unpin. To open up the line. But here they could just deliver a check and join the queen to the defense. So that's why here knight h2 doesn't work, but knight e3 works. We are still attacking the queen. Rook takes, queen takes, and this is a winning position. After e4 we have extra exchange, plus our pieces are much more active. No, and yeah, here we sacrifice the material but escape with our queen. No, yeah, like that. It's a winning position with no doubts. Or instead of, here, for example, instead of playing e4, we can play a better move, rook g2. If king takes, then queen f4, we are a lot of pawns up. If queen takes g2, we play rook e8. And after, let's say, rook d6, we just gain the bishop. They have to block and give up the bishop. So what happened in the game? This is what Sergei Zhigalko analyzed when he was preparing to this game. But in case of f takes g3, it's just bishop f3, and white is a pawn down in this position. Plus they still have a strong attack. The game continued, but there was actually nothing to talk about. Oh, here rook e8 is a better move, but rook g8 is okay. Queen d6, knight e4, fork, and knight g5 even. So you see, there is no need to take, because after knight g5, knight h3, the game is over. And there is no defense. The only defense is to sacrifice the rook, but together with the rook you also sacrifice the queen. And that's it. Okay guys, so here actually we noticed a complex of weak squares into the enemy camp, plus a lot of our pieces attacking already on the king side, trying to attack the king, and that's why we consider it a kingside attack. It was not a sacrifice. We played queen h4 first to bring more pieces into the attack, but then we were able to sacrifice the material. Okay, that's all that I wanted to show you. Do you have any questions? If yes, you may ask, or you may email me. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. So again, this is a link for you to subscribe. So next Sunday I am going to conduct another webinar. By the way, guys, for people living in America, in the United States or Canada, what do you think? What's the best time for you? 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time or 9 a.m. 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. What do you think? What is best? So guys, please answer, because this is important. And of course, when I announce my webinar, I will mention which time do we start, but now I would like to choose. No, I suggest at 9 a.m., but maybe it's too early for you at 9 a.m. on Sunday. However, if there are just a few people from America, then it's fine. If there are a lot, then we will try to adjust our timing. Anyway, so thank you for joining, and hope to see you on the next class, on the next webinar.